Hi, I'm Stuart, this is Isaiah, and we made some Super Bowl content in one day, and we want to talk about how we did it.
We made it and actually posted it on social media in a single day. We had a little bit of concepting the day before when we realized the Super Bowl's coming up and we ought to make something for it. And then it was Friday and,
Well, one thing that helps you make something in a day is if you have all of the materials that you need to do it. There's Evan, our wonderful fabricator. And so we do a lot of stop motion, so we had things like AstroTurf and a ton of paper and all. So we just basically all that we lacked was the idea. So yeah, I mean, concept is pretty simple here. Of course, Other Brother is based in Kansas City. So we just wanted to kind of, tease Philadelphia a little bit and make it seem like it was more likely that they'd win. But, we all knew Kansas City was going to pull it off in the end.
Yeah, we have our biases here, for sure. One of the things that really helps, especially with stop motion, is doing your pre-production planning very, very well. Even for something as simple as this ad or this bit of content, we needed to know exactly what we were building, because this building phase takes probably the majority of the time especially when you're doing stop motion. Even with paper, paper's nice because it's fast. You can fabricate a lot of stuff really quickly. But when we built this, we didn't really have time to try different options and things. So that pre-production, that planning phase, the very, very beginning, goes a really long ways, keeping all of our productions moving really nicely and smoothly. This part of it feels like we spent a long time fabricating stuff, and actually there was probably the majority of this little time lapse that we cut out and aren't showing you is just us making stuff, because it takes time.
Yeah, some of the experimentation that happens here is, the materials are relatively simple, and a lot of times what you're doing is working with what it looks like under camera, not necessarily what it looks like just to the naked eye. So it's like even that little dial thing, it's a pretty simple shape. One of the things we did, just throw a simple crease down the middle so it plays with the light a little bit more, gives it a little bit more depth. It's just one of those little tricks of the trade of how to take something simple and make it seem a little bit more in-depth, a little more dynamic.
Or you're dressing the set, we're thinking we might shoot it a little wide, and if that's the case, we can show kind of some of the fun making of stuff around the shot. It didn't make it into the final cut, but we're always thinking about how to frame every aspect that we're shooting.
Yeah. There's the handy dandy hot glue that is behind every stop motion shoot.
I realized after the fact, it's a really good idea to put down gaffer's tape and then glue on top of that and then stick down, because then when you want to remove the tape, just peel the glue off.
You don't have to. That's a good tip for me, not just for the audience, but for me.
Yeah, this is Evan is practicing the different hand movements, trying to figure out how to really articulate that flick under the camera. And when you're doing, this is called pixelation. When you're doing this, you want to really figure out the best arcs of motion, the best way to overemphasize certain parts to make it really feel alive. Because if you just flick it like you would on video, you're not going to get kind of the same.
It's going to look a lot stiffer if you just do it normally. You have to throw that exaggeration in there.
We're going to talk about those smear frames.
Oh yeah, it's one way to show speed is actually, you've probably seen it in the old Looney Tunes stuff, where it's instead of starting to smear those shapes to make something look like it's moving really fast, it's how you can fit a lot of movement into one frame. Because obviously the more frames you spend on a movement, the slower it will feel. So you'll notice that in the dial, when it starts going around in this section right here, the movements become the spacing between the movements becomes smaller and smaller, and that's how it starts to read like it's slowing down and settling into place.
Yeah, and we use the smear frames because stop motion it doesn't lend itself to motion blur on its own very well, because you're just doing a single frame at a time. That's about it.
Yeah, and subscribe. We want to do some more of these, so leave a comment about something you'd like to see one day build on.